Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times. Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. I am here with Francis. Francis, how are you doing this week? You were off last week, and this week we have no Tom. But how are you doing? How's your week been? How was your time away?
My time away was fantastic. It was really nice, sort of just to relax, recharge, and sort of see friends I haven't seen in a long time, and sort of sort things out around the house that needed to be sorted out. It was just great, yeah. And it helped as well that the weather was just fantastic last week. It was really nice. It seems to have gotten a bit more doom and gloom this week. But no, last week was great, and yeah, it was really good. But I'm very happy to be back this week. Like you said, no Tom, he's in Cyprus, representing the Fintech Times there at the Reflect Festival. But no, it's been good here. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been good too, thank you. Absolutely loving this weather, and I think you definitely picked the right week to have off and get some stuff done. So yeah, but now we are back talking about fintech, which is fabulous. So what are you going to be talking about today?
So my article today is about the correlation between financial education and financial wellness.
Awesome. And I'm going to be talking about a new MangoPay research that shows attitudes towards in-app wallets. But why don't you go first? We love talking about financial education on this podcast.
Oh, we do.
So
We
why
really
don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I know financial education and financial wellness aren't exactly new topics to the podcast. We talk about them probably every single week. Realistically, I feel like it's mentioned at least once. But I feel like we always hear how one impacts the other. You know, if you've got strong financial education and you understand how finances work, then you're more likely to have, a better attitude towards finances. You're a better understanding on how you use them, and just overall better financial wellness. And in theory, this does make a lot of sense. But I feel like in practice, it might actually not sort of be so night and day. I feel like there probably are some instances where perhaps, it isn't as simple as that. Like some people probably have access to financial education services and they still have poor financial wellness. So to understand the extent of it, the ClearScore Group has partnered with the Money Charity and the Aviva Foundation this past week to launch a year-long study to find out the correlation of financial education and financial wellness. So around 5,000 ClearScore users are expected to take part in the study, and they will receive financial education, which will then be monitored against a control group for any improvements to their financial capability, credit score, and wider credit worthiness. So I think when you combine the Money Charity's sort of advice and education services with ClearScore's reach, it should yield results. But I wanted to get your views on actually seeing financial education in action, and how in a year's time, how do you think it will compare against that control group?
Yeah, so I actually think this is going to be a really useful study, and I'm really quite excited to see like the results and also like the implications as well. Especially coming from someone like ClearScore and, like you say, partnering with like the Money Charity. That ClearScore's a pretty big name, right? And I think having their weight behind a study like this is going to be really interesting. And I love that. I feel like they're really going in on this study, like doing a year-long research experiment, I think is quite significant, especially to have like 5,000 people as well. And I feel like this is going to be really helpful to kind of show like literally exactly what financial education can do, and obviously, there's a possibility that it won't go the way that, I and you and, we are hoping for. Like I guess I would assume that after a year of receiving this financial education, people in this study would be like, have better grasp of their finances, understand things better. And like, hopefully that will be the result of it. And then people can use those results to like, implement things in other places and really argue the benefit of financial education. Hopefully that's what happens. Obviously that might not happen, but then that's also a positive as well. So if, people spend the year being taught with these financial education, however it is that they're going to be taught this, and it doesn't work into making them, better with their finances or better with their credit score, etc., then obviously we need to start looking for something else. We need to stop thinking about financial education and start thinking how we can reach these people. Or maybe, it's a case of they still need financial education, but the way in which ClearScore are going to be delivering it to them needs to change. So whatever kind of the results of this study, will be, I think it's going to be really super important to how we move forward with this kind of like financial wellness issue that we're facing at the moment, and kind of how we can better speak to the people who need it and the people that need financial education, and we talk about it so much, like you said, we literally mention it probably every week about how we need to have financial education. But then I think a lot of the times we also kind of say we need some financial education, but we don't know how to do that, or we don't know who best to implement that. But I feel like this study could really start answering some of those questions and start to kind of put a journey and a path ahead for the fintech industry, as well as, the wider financial industry, and, maybe even the government and other people involved, to go, this is what happened in a year. What can we do in 2 years? What can we do in 3 years? What can we do in 10 years? What can we do over a lifetime? And I think that is going to be really interesting. And that's really exciting to me. And hopefully we're really going to start seeing some action, and I think financial wellness and all sorts of things like that, like credit worthiness and credit scores and things like that are such hot topics at the moment with the state of the economy that it is in, that having this study now hopefully means that we can kind of look ahead to a better future of, finances that actually are working for people. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be a really interesting study. I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I think ClearScore, like I said, behind it is a really great shout, and especially with the money charity, and I think it's being funded by the Aviva Foundation, right? So I think it's going to be genuinely really quite exciting. So yeah, I feel like I'm just gushing a little bit, but things like this are how you make changes. Like, you have studies like this, you have the research, you prove your concept or you disprove your concept, and then you work and move and you develop. And I think this is how we start solving the financial wellness issue that we have. So yeah, I'm really excited about this.
No, I'm right there with you. And I think, weirdly enough, despite picking the article, I think when I saw it, I was like, yeah, financial education is going to impact financial wellness in a good way. I didn't really sort of think about it from a point of view of, well, what if it doesn't? What if the study doesn't sort of yield the results that we're expecting? And I think that's a really interesting point. It is going to then be, well, how can we change our approach to really help our users get this education that they need? And if it's not just the education, what are the life experiences that we can sort of, because obviously you don't want to go through something traumatic to make you learn from your mistake, but then, how can an organization sort of prevent that from happening, but also make you learn? So I think, yeah, that's a really interesting point of view. And I think, again, you're right, sort of seeing how it will impact in the next few years, and seeing how other sort of players in the industry, but also, like you say, the government, sort of see the results of this and then say, well, this is how we should be changing our sort of potentially school curriculums, or, changing how, setting a standard in financial service providers, that they need to have a sort of an important education course that you need to take if you sign up, or something like that. Obviously that would have a lot of friction, and perhaps that isn't exactly the way, but something along those lines, I'm sure, would probably, it's an option. And at the end of the day, I think that is ultimately what these organizations are trying to find, is what are the best options for people to help them learn. So no, absolutely, I think you've raised some really good points there. But with that, why don't we go over to your article?
Yeah, absolutely. So not dissimilar, but not super similar. My article today is all about in-app wallets and how they're proving to be a really popular payment method within the UK, as a new research from MangoPay has found that 1 in 4 Brits say they use them up to 3 times a week. So the study basically examined responses from 1,000 UK consumers as well as 5,000 European consumers, and found that though debit and credit cards are still the most popular payment method within the UK, in-app wallets are really starting to gain quite a lot of traction and have taken second place in terms of popular payment methods, especially now that we are approaching the summer months. So 87% of UK adults identify the cost of living as one of the most important issues facing the country, and have found that in-app wallets are emerging as actually being a really useful financial tool, as well as just being like a convenient way to pay. So, with in-app wallets, you can use them to collect loyalty points, collect rewards, earning money through digital platforms. And 41% of people even said that they preferred refunds to be paid directly into their wallets over their bank accounts. And I thought this was really interesting. I think it kind of says a lot about different behaviors when it comes to how people sort of use their finances, which is kind of like sort of very similar to what we talked about just now with your article, Francis, in terms of like what are the behaviors that people do and how can we use those behaviors to like make their financial wellness better. I think it's really interesting, specifically how people prefer refunds to be paid directly into their wallets over their bank accounts, because that's something that I also do sometimes. I sometimes, if you ever have like a refund or maybe like an unexpected payment, or like someone's paying you back for something, etc., or you have like just money coming in randomly, I sometimes don't like to put that in my bank account, because then I feel like it gets sucked up with all the sort of everyday spending that you do. Like that 20 quid that I got back from a mate will then just suddenly vanish into thin air because it gets paid for a bill, or to go out to eat. So I like to use things like this to keep my money separate, and I think a lot of people also do that. So I thought it was really interesting to see how in-app wallets are kind of shaping user experiences for fintech and becoming useful for things that maybe when we sort of started launching in-app wallets, maybe we didn't necessarily think that they'd be used for. And so it's kind of definitely looking at like smart ways to spend, navigating the economic situation in the UK at the moment, and just generally like people navigating their own financial situation and kind of using them to budget or using them to sort of understand their finances better. And I just thought this was really interesting, and I really liked the survey, and I thought the results were really interesting, particularly when we're thinking about like loyalty rewards as well. So the survey found that loyalty rewards are the most requested feature, with 44% of people saying it would improve their in-app wallet experience. And so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this, Francis. I guess, have you ever used sort of in-app wallet in that kind of way? And does this kind of surprise you in any way that in-app wallets are becoming more popular for other sort of aspects of finance, or is that something that you just kind of think, yeah, that's kind of part and parcel to an in-app wallet?
I think that, yeah, I think when you start to look at why in-app wallets are becoming so popular, I think one thing that we need to consider is just that it's the convenience of them. I think sort of as humans, we probably always like to sort of say, well, I have this app and this app can do X, Y, but I want it to do Z as well. And then it starts to do Z, and you're like, well, I don't need any other apps then. This is starting to do everything I need. And like you say, then it becomes a thing of, well, can I sort of put some money aside and use it in a certain way without misusing it somewhere else? And it's like that example you gave of, getting refunded into a certain wallet so that you don't spend that money elsewhere. It's like thinking, well, I've dedicated this amount of money to, I don't know, buying clothes or whatever it might be. And you say, well, that money is now going to be for buying clothes. It's not going to be for something else, or like you say, or buying food or whatever it might be. And I think that's really where the perks of in-app wallets really lies, is that they can just provide such a convenient benefit. And it really doesn't surprise me that these organizations, like you say, have started to realize that they can offer so much more just than a convenient way to pay. It's like, well, if we can offer all these other benefits, that's just going to improve customer loyalty. And as we've discussed on the podcast before, that is the ultimate end game for an organization, is to get this long-term loyalty. So including loyalty rewards, including what were the other things that they said? It was refunds and just earning money as well through digital platforms. Once you start to put all of that in one place, it becomes really simple for users, and not having to go to different apps or different processes and do all these different things that just, again, like we sort of mentioned before, cause this friction that are going to make consumers think, well, actually, let me look elsewhere. If it's all really simple to use and it's all in one place, it's the recipe for success. And I feel like that is what in-app wallets are doing nowadays. And I feel like that's what they're going to continue to do going forward. And I think it sort of takes out the middleman of having to think, right, how am I going to divide up my money? It's, I've put money here on this side and I can leave it there because I know that I'm going to spend that money on whatever that might be. And inadvertently, it becomes a budgeting app. And that's not what it intended to do necessarily, but I think it's going to be really, really helpful for that. And going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more people opt to put money into these wallets over their bank accounts. So yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting, some really interesting research from MangoPay. And again, as with all things, it'll be interesting to see how it changes over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you raised some really valid points there, and I think the fact that it's been using as a budgeting app is so interesting because like we say, it's not necessarily meant to be a budgeting app, but I wonder if this kind of the super app mindset, having an all-in-one app that everyone's so keen about, whether that's going to like bleed into other areas and things, and whether retailers and merchants are going to realize this is kind of what people are doing and people are hopeful for. But so no, super interesting. But thank you so much, Francis, for discussing these articles with me. If you want to hear any more about anything we've talked about today, head over to fintechtimes.com, where there are plenty more news and insights over there. But very quickly, let's do what I learned this week. So each week we are learning something new, being on the Fintech Times editorial team, that we thought it'd be fun to share that with our listeners. So Francis, what have you learned this week?
So this week I learned that the London FinTech Summit is launching this October, as FinTech Week London has partnered with Trescon, and this will be sort of reimagining the conference that we've seen in the past 4 years. And in this fifth year, it will now be this new and improved summit. So that will be something really exciting to look forward to this October.
Awesome stuff. Really very exciting. And what I learned this week is that according to the International Air Transport Association, 43% of all fraudulent payment transactions globally occur in the airline industry, which I just thought was an absolute crazy number. But anyway, Francis, thank you so much for joining me this week. It's so good to have you back on the podcast. Hopefully next week we'll get Tom back as well, and it will all be the gang back together again talking about fintech. But until that point, have a great week, and I will catch you on the next one.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.